No, 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 no. I just like talking. Let's just talk.
All
So,
right,
what are we
cool.
talking about this week on that note?
So I guess the question that is on my mind this week is how do we approach work in an overworking culture? Because as in the kind of like past recent years, I've realized that we've gone from it's a by any means necessary thing to I need to take care of my mental health. And I just want to know how that kind of how where is the distinction, what works and what's best.
Mm, that's a good question. I think you're right. I think part of the issue and part of the difficulty. Wait 1 second. Let me just make sure that I'm recording with the right audio. Cool. Yeah. So part of the difficulty, I think, is that there's always this duality where people just lie. People say, "Oh, it's all about your mental health. It's all about this and that," but then at the same time, it's hustle and grind. It's get your money up. It's what were you doing during the pandemic? You have, you know. I think there's that duality there where people say one thing and don't represent it. I was actually watching a YouTube video from Edinger. I don't know if you follow him. He's the guy that does all these. I haven't watched him in years, but I came across one of his videos recently. But he
Mhm.
used to do the. He's from the US and moved to the UK, and he talks about
Okay.
stuff that's different.
Mhm.
They're like funny videos, and then I think he also does language and learning kind of videos.
Mhm.
But anyway, he's a big YouTuber now. He probably has about 600,000 subscribers.
Mhm.
And he was talking about he was having issues with YouTube, the platform, and he couldn't upload videos. There's tech issues, stuff on the back end. And he was talking about part of the issue where, on one hand, on the front end, the YouTube marketing team is sending you these emails that's like, oh, take a break. You don't have to feel like you need to produce content all the time. Your fans will still be here when you get back. Take a holiday, take some days off. At the same time, the way the algorithm is built, if you take 2 days off, you're finished. Like your next video is not seeing as many people anymore.
Yeah.
Instagram is very similar. And I've gotten over it. But as an example, at one point my Instagram was doing a lot better. I had a lot of quote unquote brand deals or influencer kind of things. We won't get
Mhm.
into that. That's
Mhm.
time's past. But the point is, you get a lot of reach, you get a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
If you stop posting on Instagram, or even if you keep posting, if the last thing you posted didn't do well,
Mm.
the next thing you post won't be shown to as many people. And one of the issues I had with that is that I do photography. I'm a photographer.
Oh, okay.
Generally, the
Mm.
kind of things that people will like when I post is things that are with me. If I'm front and
Mm.
center, if I'm in
Mhm.
the photo, it will do better. If I'm posting like my photography,
Mm.
things that I'm doing, other things, I can't post croissants and coffee like some people do. It's not Emily in Paris. She can do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Apparently, I can't do that kind of stuff. If I do that, I get like 70 likes. If I'm posting, it's just me, I can get a couple hundred likes. So there's a difference.
Mhm.
But the issue then is that if I post the stuff that I want to post, they're not even showing it to my friends. Like my friends that follow me,
Mm.
I can't share things with them because of the algorithm.
Mm.
And so, how this feeds back to what you're saying, I know I've extrapolated a bit, is
Mm.
that there's a duality, particularly on the internet. And when you rely on the internet, when you rely on platforms to be able to produce, to be able to do different things, on one hand, people say, because it's the zeitgeist, because it's popular, oh, take a break, take care of your mental health, relax. At the same time, these algorithms are pushing you to produce content. If you don't produce content every 5 minutes,
Yeah.
something's gonna happen, and you're worthless to them now. They're not gonna show your videos. They're not gonna show your posts to anyone because they
Mhm.
can't make money from it. And so that's the irony there. I know if JJ was here, she'll be telling us about capitalism. I know that is that is a very real issue. And I think, yeah, like it also feeds in even offline. Part of the inherent issue is that people need to eat at the end of the day, you know. Um, but I want to hear your thoughts on one bit
Mm.
where this is where I do kind of subscribe a bit more to not hustle culture,
Mm.
but hard work. because I don't know if you have heard of or follow Jason Calcanis. I think I've mentioned him on this before. He's like a Silicon Valley investor. He's been, you know, part of Silicon Valley, the scene from
Mm,
the early days. I think he used to be more of a journalist and a writer, and he produced some early platforms. He sold them, blah blah blah. The point being, he recently got in some trouble when he posted a tweet that, in my mind, I can see both sides. Just because of how
mm,
Twitter is, I can see how people are going to jump on that. But at
mm,
the same time, all he was basically saying, in short, is if you work hard, you can get results. That's basically it. The issue is obviously that everything is more complicated than what it looks like on the surface. You know,
mm,
there's privilege, there's access to technology. I think I can't remember if it was him or it was someone else, but I think someone else said something similar where they were like, these tools are universal. The tools that we have now, in terms of whether you want to write, whether you want to speak, whether you want to, put something out, these tools are universal. It's about how you use the tools that matters. So,
mm,
use these things well, create your platform, do your thing, and work hard, and you'll be successful. Again,
mm,
people have issues. Everyone throwing rocks at his head
mm,
because what people will say is, and this is very true, these things aren't universal. The creator economy isn't actually open to everyone in the way that you think it is. You know,
mm,
Stripe, which is how a lot of platforms process the payments, even paying creators, doesn't work in some countries in South America, as an example, and possibly some countries in Africa. So if you are a creator in those countries, you can't even get paid by the same platforms that everyone else is getting paid from.
mm,
So from that angle, I understand it. Simultaneously, I, I think there's a lot of people that they see the results of what people get when they work hard and they want it because it's nice, it's shiny, it's glamorous. But people don't always necessarily want to have to do the grinding part.
mm,
And I'm not saying everyone should be getting up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 4 a.m. I'm not saying any of that. But I am saying that um, to an extent, I think that there is a correlation between it's not causation. It's not a case of the only way to become successful, the only way to build things is to live like this, to do things like this.
mm,
However, I would say there's a correlation in that there's a lot of people that live like this and work like this that get things like that.
mm,
That just happens. There's other ways to do it, but you have to find those ways for yourself. The one
mm.
way that I know does work is just working hard. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's quite interesting because even just remembering one of your newsletters that you put out, um, in having read that, like one of the points that you made is that we can't. One of the points that you made was this whole idea of the birth lottery, that life isn't necessarily just a meritocracy. There's like people. I feel like I'm just picking up bare random points, but people can't just work hard. You're here, or you're in a particular place because of the privileges that you've been afforded to having to go into that place, and they are nothing to do with you. Like, it's nothing to do with you. It's literally, you're born in a particular place with a particular skin tone to a particular family, and suddenly you're like, if you were to do something, and if I was to do something, to say that people would like two different skin tones, like a person who is of a lighter skin tone is preferably going to get further in life just because of their differences. Now, it doesn't take a genius. I mean, to be honest, it probably does these days, the way people are making it seem like it doesn't take a genius to notice that, well, if two people are putting in the same amount of effort into something, then they should really be reaping the same amount of rewards. But these barriers exist because just because someone is different, or someone is physically different, like it's almost like a handicap to someone. And so it's almost like you can't just attribute hard work to be the only thing that gets you far in life. I mean, it's something that we can all do, but it's not something that gets us to the same place at exactly the same time.
Okay, absolutely. I do agree with that. I think, it's not the same and it's not synonymous. And I think that's what a lot of people discount when they say, oh, all you have to do is work hard. So I
Mm,
think that's part of the issue where, you're making the assumption that, oh, tools are universal, or as long as you have access to these tools, you can do this, you can do that. That's not always the case. And
mhm,
part of that newsletter that you're talking about, I was talking about um the idea that there's two levels to privilege. So one is the level of, do I even remember what I was talking about? Um, so I was talking about friction,
yeah.
and um, within friction, I guess there's two sides. So one is manufactured friction, and one is natural friction. And so natural friction is something like you're born in some countries in Africa, or you're born somewhere where there's not huge access to internet,
Mm,
or their Stripe isn't available in your country. Things like that. That is natural friction. That's just,
mm,
unfortunately, from where you were born right
mhm,
now, you have more barriers to some things than other people do. If
mhm,
and that applies even, I was talking on a very macro scale. Let's look at London very specifically, for example.
mm,
You have much lower friction to information if you grow up in a house where you have faster Wi-Fi, where you're closer to public libraries, where you're closer to public parks, things like that.
mhm,
You have far greater friction if you don't have a lot of those things. But
mhm,
we're starting to get to the intersection of what I call manufactured friction, and that's
mhm,
about the allocation of resources. So that's where, as we've seen in the UK as an example, the government decides where to put um, schools, and they decide where to put libraries. They close some libraries. They, they close some after school clubs, things like that. And so now you have situations, and gentrification is also part of that. So you have situations where it's not really natural. This is now becoming manufactured friction, where because of the way that you're organizing your society, you're adding barriers for people. And there's other things that fall into that. For example, even in hiring practices, let's say, you organize your hiring in a way that could increase the chances of, even just accepting CVs where everyone's name's on them. You're leaving room for implicit biases to influence your decision making about what
mhm,
kind of people you want to work here. Because now it's going to be easy to know this person's a man, this person's a woman, this person is from this country. I don't know
mhm,
about that. I have a perfect example of that actually.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
I I won't say, I won't give away too much details because it's one of those things. But in
mhm,
somewhere I have worked in the past, we had, I remember, so this was in within the law context. I've worked at a few law firms, so it's not, hugely obvious, but if you're paying attention, it might be. Okay, so what I'll say is we have vac schemers. I don't know if you know about vacation schemes. They're a bit like summer internships within law. So if you're trying to get
Okay.
into a law firm, before you apply for a training contract, usually you'll
Mhm,
do a vacation scheme. That's like a summer internship. So
yeah.
we have like several cohorts a year of summer interns. I remember one cohort, and I remember, so I think they just left or they just done their interviews, and
Mhm,
I'm in this office. It's me, a senior associate, and I think a partner or two senior associates, one of the two. Anyway, sitting in this room, I'm not really part of the conversation. I'm just doing minding my business. They are having a discussion about some of the interviews they just had. They're talking
mhm,
about this girl, and they're like, actually, I think it was the same girl, but earlier that week, I'll talk about two incidents. So at one point, they're going through the list of the names of the people that are coming. And this
mhm,
guy's like, oh, that name, she's Turkish. They're just popping up everywhere. And you're like, interesting. Okay. Now, fast forward. So that's towards the beginning of this person doing the internship.
mhm,
The end of the internship comes. They've done their interviews. Now, I'm listening to the feedback of this person's interview. And the one person is saying, you know, I don't know. She just doesn't seem like a lawyer to me. And I was like, huh? But even to preface this, the feedback they were given before was also that she's asking a lot of questions, but it seems like, and they were good questions, but it felt like the reason she was asking those questions is just because she wanted a job and not because she was specifically interested in this area of law. Because even when you do this internship, you don't stay in one practice group the whole time. Usually you
Mm-hmm.
spend some time in one, then you go do another. In my head, I'm like, who told you she actually cares? What, two things? First of all, she doesn't have to care about your practice group.
Mm-hmm.
She if she's asking good questions, that's a good thing. She's asking good questions because she's smart. She doesn't have to ask good questions because she cares. I don't know where that
Mm-hmm.
assumption came from. The second thing, this is a hungry student, hungry physically as well as mentally. She wants a job. You can't come and say, oh, I feel like she's only asking these questions because she wants a job. That's why she's here. That's why she's not doing internships for fun. She's not doing this because she was bored in her university accommodation. She's doing this internship because she wants a job.
Mm.
She's asking good questions because she's smart. But somehow, because of all these implicit biases that are going through your head, she just doesn't really seem like a lawyer to me. And I
Mm.
don't even know what that sentence means because you haven't added any what is it about her that is making you think she doesn't seem like a lawyer? And I'm sure we could unpack that in a multiplicity of ways. I don't want to make any assumptions or assertions, and that's why I
Mm.
haven't given too many specific details. But
Mm.
these are the facts. And so, yes, I think, okay, I've now extrapolated a lot, but going back to the point, it's just the
Mm.
fact that, when we talk about privilege, these are the kind of little things that end up hampering someone's progress. Because
Mm.
that girl, it's not like she was dumb. It's not like she did anything wrong. She did everything right. But because of maybe hiring processes, because of implicit bias, because of manufactured friction, she's
Mm.
now, at least within that institution, is going to have a harder time getting a job. So that's my take on that aspect.
Mm. I feel like we've differed so far from the question.
Okay. Let me get back on track. So we are talking about you were asking me about, is it essentially just, do people need to work hard, and the issues with overworking culture? I think,
Yeah.
but what I was
Okay, no,
saying
I
is,
see how we
when it,
can.
as I was talking about, as it relates to success and as it relates to doing what you need to do. And so what we were talking about is the difference between, on one hand, I actually do believe you need to work hard. You need to go
Oh
read
yeah,
some books. You need
yeah.
to have some understanding about how the world operates so that you can deploy that knowledge when you're in
Mm.
interviews, when you're having
Mm.
conversations, when you're writing online, when you're doing things. You need to have these resources available, and you're only going to have those resources if you've done the work. However, where we were talking about the flip side when you introduced
Mm.
it, is this idea that
Mm.
there's an extent to which, as much as you do the work on your end, there will be friction. That friction might exist naturally by virtue of your location, by virtue of the resources you have access to, things like that.
Mm.
Then there's another set of friction where it's the obstacles being put in your path. There's a library that you live near that's been closed. There's you know you're being forced out of your area because of gentrification, and now
Mm.
you can't afford it. And there's so much wrapped in that we should have a whole different top conversation about some of
Honestly.
these things that are wrapped up in privilege. Because I was even reading earlier this week, about how um it was something like people from ethnic minority backgrounds are, I think it's like 30 to 70% more likely to have uncertain hours. And what that means is that, maybe your parents do shift work, maybe they do essentially just the kind of
Mm.
work. This could be in nursing, this could be in, just any common job. But the problem being that when we talk about childcare, when we talk about people being in work and kids having access to parenting when they're going to school,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's one problem with parents being able to afford childcare for their kids that are at home. There's another problem for the parents knowing when they're not going to be at home. And so if they're getting their shift schedule and it's too close to when they need to go out, they just leave their kids at home. And so now
Mm,
those kids don't have the same support at home. They don't have their parent looking over their shoulder and saying, you got that math question wrong. I
mm,
did it when I was in school. I know. Sometimes these kids' parents, if they're immigrants, might not have even done that kind of maths at home.
mm,
I had several people I went to school with where their parents were learning English at the same time they were. Everybody's learning English at the same time. And so nobody can correct things for you or explain things for you. You're usually the one correcting them. And so all of these things feed into the privilege aspect. But let's pivot. I want to get your thoughts on
mm,
um, maybe the another element of hustle culture or working hard, which is
mm.
the side hustle element.
Oh my
And
god.
obviously, I could talk about that because I have side hustles, but you also have side hustles. So tell me
Yeah.
more about your thoughts on that.
I feel like it's so interesting because I'm like in and out of it. Like I've currently taken somewhat of a break. Well, I say somewhat of a break in by means of saying that I'm trying not to treat it as so much of a priority right now. But I feel like that whole thing, that whole place is so interesting. And like you were saying earlier about JJ talk about capitalism, it's quite interesting because I can't scroll through TikTok or I can't just go down a TikTok rabbit hole without at least there being 3 TikToks about how I can make $100 in an hour, $15 in an hour by just completing surveys and sign up for this and that. I'm like, bro, like I just want to chill. I'm cool. I'm cool. Like I don't need to do I don't need to do all of that. What maybe I mean I don't need to do it at the moment, but I don't really want to spend as much of my 3 hours trying to make as much money as possible because I've got the rest of my life to do that. And I guess there's this whole thing that just to pivot back to the conversation is that in one of my thought sessions I deeped that there's actually an issue with in um trying to see the value in the things that we do, the hobbies that we apply to ourselves through just kind of a pound sign. Like, all right, cool, I can do this. How much money can I make from it? Right, I can do that. How much money can I make from that? And it turns into all of these kind of unfinished projects because at a certain point, sooner or later, you're going to get customers complaining to you that you're not doing the thing like to the high standard that you'd assigned in the beginning. And really and truly, it's kind of like it was fun, but now that I have to work for it and I have to do it even when I don't want to, it's not fun. And I guess that's kind of like the downside of discipline. You need to keep going, but it's not every point in your life. It's not everything that you need to monetize. Really and truly, it's like there's like maybe 1 or 2 things that you could do here or there, but it's not every single thing. Like I've seen a lot in university. I've seen people be MUAs, what like hairstylists, nail colorists, what like all the sorts, and you'll see them
Mm.
post on an Instagram page, hey, I've started a new project, come support, and they will never post again.
Yeah, you've touched on a couple of really interesting points there. On just let me just start with that last one because I'll probably forget. It's very funny how I was looking online not long ago. It was earlier today because we just published a new podcast episode. You should go check
Woo!
it out with
Come
Twisted
on.
Nate,
Yeah.
the co-founder of Afrocentrics, which is an awesome business. But I was looking at something and I realized that my podcast is like a top 10% podcast. And
Wow.
what's funny about that? No, that's not a floss at all. It's
Just
not.
dropping that.
No.
What a
Well, two things.
flex.
One, okay, we do get a lot of people listening, which is funny because I haven't been as consistent as I would like to be. And so it's interesting how that means there's a lot of people that are just coming and watching previous episodes when there's nothing new. Although now and continuing, there will always be new things. Um, but really all it is about is consistency. That is how
Mm,
you become a top 10% podcast. And it's not even necessarily by getting better. So I'm not saying we're in the top 10% because, oh my gosh, it's such a fantastic podcast. I think it's
Mm,
great. I think it's great. But when you look at the statistics of podcasts, right? I think there's something like 6 million podcasts. Okay. But that 6 million is not the same 6 million what that they keep referring to, because the average podcast does not last for more than 10 episodes. So everyone thinks, oh, I should do podcasting. I should become a podcaster. I should come and start doing this thing. And then they don't do it. Or they do it, they start it, it lasts for a couple weeks, and then nobody ever sees them again. And so that is part of the issue where it's funny how you can essentially rise to the top, well, not the very top, but you can rise into the top 10th percentile just by continuing to do what you said you were going to do.
mm,
And I think my newsletter is also a good example of this, where I started
mm,
this newsletter the beginning of last year.
mm,
Again, during COVID, the peak of COVID, I wasn't always writing as consistent as I would like to have been. There's a part where I dropped off, but I got back on, and I've been writing at least this year every single week
mm,
since I started this year. I started on the second week of January. We're
mm,
now in April, every single week. And again, I think I'm getting better. I think the content is good. I think people are, reading it for the right reasons.
mm,
But just by continuing to do what I said I was going to do, it rises in popularity, it rises in readership. You end up being in a quote unquote high percentile just because you continued to do it. And I guess the results from that are compounding. So that also ties into what you were saying before in terms of people deciding what and what not to monetize. Because I do agree.
mm.
I think, when you have side hustles or hobbies or things that you rely on, they get difficult. Me doing the podcast, difficult. Me doing the newsletter, difficult. Especially when it becomes an expectation. When I started doing the newsletter, the very first one I sent it out literally to friends, and you can still read it. And I was just like, I'm gonna start doing this thing. I'm gonna send it out to you guys. If you read it, fantastic. If you don't, you can unsubscribe. Cool. Now it's grown. It's now, everyone, at least a few hundred up to a few thousand people will read it.
Wow.
Cool. But what comes with that is also
Mm,
expectation. Now, if I don't release a newsletter, people will
mm.
email me or DM
Wow.
me and say, "Are you okay? Where's this
Wow.
thing? Because you made me a promise and you said you were going to do this thing. Where is it?" So there's difficulty. And so
Mm.
to alleviate that, there's one or two things, maybe now, maybe I need to get paid. Maybe if I had a monetary incentive other than just a promise that I'd made to people,
Yeah.
then it would justify the amount of time and the amount of effort, because it's not magic. I can't just sit down and words come out. It's, it takes
Mm,
time, it takes effort. And
mm,
so part of that is necessitates maybe you now need to look to monetize it, even if you did it from passion.
mm,
Um, but then on the flip side, and it's an idea I think I brought up before when we were talking about, I think we were talking about saving maybe. But anyway, there's the other side of side hustling where I think there's a lot of people, and you mentioned this as well. People are just looking for a fast buck. And
mm,
there's a side of that which we can talk about, which is people are hungry. Capitalism is hard. You know, life isn't easy. Okay,
mm,
that's one side, and that's 100% true. In the
mm,
UK and in the US as well, wage growth has been stagnant for a very long time. There's not a good position to be in.
mm.
Even me, can I pay my rent? Can I eat food this week? You're having to make hard decisions. I need more money from somewhere. That
I'm
I'm in
okay.
that position. Everyone's in that position.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think there's another group of people where it's just maybe, I mean, the motivation is similar in that, okay, I need more money. But I think the difference is there's a lot of people when they think of that and when they're thinking of what side hustle should I do, they're thinking more from the perspective of what can I do to get money? And what people forget is that money, typically, traditionally, is an
Mm,
exchange of value.
mm,
Money is a token of value, right?
mm,
Money represents that value. And so someone giving you that money, what they're expecting it in exchange is value. But
mhm.
when a lot of people start thinking about, oh, what side hustle should I do? They're not thinking, what value can I provide? They're thinking, how can I trick people into giving me money? that's the real that's the real game a lot of people are trying to play. Not everyone, I'm not saying everyone's doing that, but a lot of people, it's that's the symptom. The underlying symptom is that a lot of people are just thinking, how can I hack? How can I find a way to get money from other people without having to do too much, without having to provide too much actual value? How can I just find a way to get people to give me money? And so I think, yeah, that the part of the issue that I see there is just that we need to have a bit more empathy in that process. And I think that is how you find ways to monetize things. Because there's a lot of businesses that I've started, or a lot of ways that I've been able to get money, where it just starts by helping people. It just starts by, if you see a problem in the world and something that is difficult for people, you see friction for other people. If you solve that problem, people will pay you almost anything to alleviate pain. Nobody likes discomfort. If that discomfort comes from feeling like you don't know enough and you can provide a writing set, like you write a newsletter that people feel like, wow, this adds fulfillment, this adds value to me, maybe they'll pay you for it. Maybe you're giving them crucial business information. Maybe you're giving them something else. But if that thing is valuable, people will pay you for it. And so I think that should be a starting point if you're just looking to make money. But yeah, I do also think that as part of that, the issue is just that there's a lot of people that just stop by thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's doing a side hustle. I should be doing a side hustle too. And I think sometimes you should relax, because these side hustles are not fun. Running a business is never as fun as people think it's going to be. And I think that's one good thing. I'm very grateful that now I've been able to connect and speak to a lot of other business owners, entrepreneurs, people that work in tech as I do now. Because the people on the other side of that, not that I'm, doing well or wealthy like any of them, but the part that I empathize with is, you realize this is hard. This is not easy. This is not fun a lot of the time. And you need to find, you know, intrinsic motivators. You need to find something else that's going to push you along and make you keep going and make you keep doing this work. There's a really good book I would recommend on that. I actually recommended it in my last newsletter by Seth Godin, called The Practice. And that was really good. I think you should read it as well. Do you have any final thoughts? That was to you, Gabriel, by the way. I was saying you should read that book.
If the signal is cracking up like crazy, I don't know what just happened. It was just like a long stream of just goodness, and then you were just breaking up, and I was like, whoa.
Wow. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts before we disappear? Oh, wait, mad.
Our final thoughts.
Cameron, I like.
Hello, I'm so sorry. So sorry I'm late. We're having some.
Oh, pardon?
Hello, hi, Gabriel.
Nah, this is
Nice
crazy. This is insane.
Can you hear me?
No
Can you
worries.
see me?
Okay, no, it's good. We can have some thoughts from you. I've got to jump off in a sec. I've got a meeting from work, but we can have another slot where you can come on and you can give us your thoughts, because I had some really good. I want to hear from you about quite a couple of things. One, maybe you can give us some quick thoughts now on what your thoughts are on like side hustles and hustle culture and the necessity of it, as opposed to just taking care of your mental health and taking care of yourself. And then the other part of it is side hustles. Like, do you need to be doing all that? Can you just conserve your energy?
I truly believe that there's a really high mandate for side hustles at the moment. So generally speaking, I think the best way to learn is to do. I think like the project and the practicality of like creating things, even if, for example, like I'm learning Russian, you can see in the corner of the thing, I'm learning Russian. And like if I were to then start like a blog or start like a thing about that experience, then that's probably a better way for me to learn, to really put myself out there and for me to do something. That's a type of side hustle. Like, I don't think that every type of side hustle needs to be directly monetizable or needs to be, necessarily like the next big business and like side hustles turn to unicorn. I think that's all unnecessary. But do I think that we should be putting ourselves with as much time as we can to like the creation of new things and to developing things? Yeah, absolutely. If that's actually coming at the risk of your mental health, don't force it. Like choose where you put your energy. Like, it's really funny to kind of see the promotion of a hustle culture at the risk of oneself. because literally, like in their nature, a side hustle is it's just a little thing I do. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't even, in my head, it doesn't even need to be as consistent as that. I might make food. I might be somebody who like, yeah, you know what? If there's an event going on, Cam will cook for you, or Cam, if I've got time, if work allows, because it's a side hustle. So like, it very much just shouldn't be, you know, something that is a burden or overbearing. It needs to be on the side and negotiated around the things that you're doing. And I think sometimes it's just a really simple answer to a complex thing. Do you know what I mean? But if your time can prioritize and can allow, absolutely do a side hustle. Side hustles, I'm sure, will in turn become people's careers, and be great places for people to go. But at the risk of one's mental health, it sounds like a give or take that we shouldn't really be engaging with necessarily. You know, like it's not. I don't think it's that deep. You know.
Okay, so on that note, how do you find the side hustle that's right for you? How do you find? Because a lot of what you were saying maybe comes from more the passion side, the passion project.
Yeah.
But I know there's other ways. People just want money. People want other ways that they can either, you know, either the hustle is you're contributing some kind of value and you're putting something out into the world, but then on the other side, it's just I need some money. How can I get some money? So what do you think about that?
That's interesting. Monetizing side hustles. You know what? Honestly, really and truly, first things first, I believe that in one's job, we need to be looking for the fulfillment that we actually have. And like, I'll tell you like the best example of this that I always kind of realize, and I think young Black people especially have this kind of philomath mentality where we can kind of do everything, and we'll have our job, which is earning and paying well, but we want more, so we're also doing like a side hustle and a blog and a podcast. And like when you look at the kind of most significant elements of wealth creation over the last, say, century, right? The thing that obviously always draws my attention is Silicon Valley. Just a good example. You look at things like the PayPal mafia. You look at things like Bill Gates. And I think what's really important is that when you're talking about wealth building, you're looking at systems, and you're looking at, there's a lot of things that happened before that enabled these people to make wealth. One of the most important things that happened is that all of these people were middle class enough to have the time and to have the capacity to basically just support each other's companies, to jump out of Stanford, where they all were. So A, Stanford's there. B, they had their middle class enough to kind of, you know, be there. And C, they're all, a lot of them are quite brilliant. If you just take the PayPal mafia, obviously, a lot of them, coincidentally, even for just a Stanford, like a top uni, whatever, at that time, in a specific place, they're all there, right? And this has created one of the biggest wealth events, I think, of, you know, of the past century. If you just kind of like decompose that and deconstruct that, the amount of free time and the amount of time that was freed for the pursuit of greater wealth is it's huge, it's significant, right? And this is what we're really, in my opinion, competing with. So I think a lot of the time, the kind of attitude to hustle culture is skewed because people think that we can kind of eat it all. Meanwhile, the people who, I wouldn't say they are ops, but I'd say that they're people who are competing for a size of the pie, right? A lot of those people have the capacity and the freedom to simply have their side hustles full time and really prioritize their passions. So I think, yeah, it's a bit of a dream that like young Black people have right now, that we can kind of have our day job in corporate, like change the world on the weekend and do a creative endeavor on a Sunday evening. You know, we need to focus and we need to really put our selves, because there are so many things that need to line up for true, deep, generationally changing wealth creation. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit on it, which is also why I work for myself. So like for me, I guess I took the side hustles and the things that I was doing, and actually I made that my job, and I kind of made side hustling and doing these different types of things my main role. But I firmly believe in that. I think that we need to kind of give the time and the energy to the things that are really, do you know what I mean? Like you can't be doing 80-hour weeks at one place and then like our communal focused endeavors, our side hustles are suddenly changing the world on the weekend. Meanwhile, other people who are kind of like creating and investing are focused and are really investing their time. Like I feel like side hustles are a platform to finding one's true passion. It's ways that we shouldn't be kind of pigeonholed into work. So we're doing our work, we're giving our best to that. Also, we've got a little thing and we're learning from that and we're putting ourselves out there from that. We're testing. We have a great ability at the moment to kind of quickly test, like rapid testing, prototyping, putting ideas out, getting feedback. I think that's what we should be using side hustles for. And then on the day-to-day, I think we would really benefit from focus. I think our community really would. So yeah, that's kind of like my piece on it. I think to really kind of, just to recap TLDR, is like if we really want to kind of like have generational like massive wealth changing opportunities, which frankly is what the black British community and the black diaspora needs. I think we have to really try and focus. But I think in order to kind of find where we should focus, we should be putting ourselves out there and really engaging with side hustles that are conducive to finding our main and conducive to finding our thing, you know? Because not everyone's going to be a kind of triple, quadruple entrepreneur where everyone's, do you know what I'm saying, things are monetizable. It's just not realistic. People aren't Da Vinci.
No, I love that. I love that. I definitely agree. And I think another aspect of what you were saying is also, even just sometimes when you're spreading yourself thin and you're trying to do lots of different things, it's the quality. And this goes back to this before you came, but I was talking about like podcasts as an example, where everyone's trying to do a podcast, loads of people create podcasts. The issue is most podcasts don't last 10 episodes and they shut down. And even within those 10 episodes, or some of the ones that continue, you would be surprised at how low the value or low the quality of the majority are. And I'm not saying this in a
these guys are trash.
No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that actually sometimes what puts people off is that they're looking and they're saying, whoa, there's 6 million podcasts. Nobody said there's 6 million good podcasts. Like, if you find a niche that's relevant to you, where you can create value and be consistent in creating that value, then that's perfect for you. And you apply that to anything.
This is the thing, though. In my head, I don't even have these necessarily high standards for side hustles, because I feel like if you're learning and improving, that's enough. If it's truly a side hustle, right? Like when you think side hustle, something I'm working on the side. For example, I might right now, I'm trying to be more operational. So I'm starting actually a computer coding course to kind of just like, I run small businesses, I run an education business. We have teachers who supply schools in different countries, especially in COVID. I also have like a little tuition business. That's kind of been my main thing throughout COVID. Previous to that, I was an entrepreneur in residence at a VC fund or within an investment bank working on VC transactions. So it's like, for me, if I'm picking up something, I might just be doing skill acquisition. So I might say, you know what, Cameron, it wouldn't necessarily be podcast, because I think my articulation isn't necessarily I don't really have a problem with finding people to chat through ideas. Like all my friends are full of a bag of chat, as David will tell you. But what I might be interested in doing, for example, maybe some design stuff, right? Some prototyping, some graphic designing. So I might jump up and say, yo, guys, really cheap. I'm willing to make logos with people, work through their designs, early prototyping, da. Could be crap. Could actually be dead, like for a minute. But if it's improving and it's getting me more aware of the economy, of the design economy, which is then feeding into my operational effectiveness, because I'm speaking to people who need designs, I'm listening, I'm hearing, that side hustle's working for me. So if the podcast is genuinely poor, but kind of as David said earlier, is consistent, is going somewhere, is leading to insights. You know what's crazy? I'd say probably one of the side hustles that I have is I'm a scout. So I'm a scout for some venture capital firms now that I'm not actually in an investment bank firm. So like, to me, it sounds so bad. I hope none of them are listening. But I was just like, wicked excuse to just chat to people who would never chat to me in real life. What? I was like, I want to talk to the astronauts and them man doing like them space do you know what I mean? All them kind of technologies there. So for me, it was just like, okay, cool. Like, I can be a side hustle for me can be a scout, and I can be bringing deal flow to these funds. And that's an excuse for me to learn about these companies and these entrepreneurs. That's how I approached it. So like, do I make money from that? Not yet. Will I? Hopefully you get 5% of the deal that, you know, they're chopping and stuff like that. But it wasn't really for that. It was from the perspective of how much can I learn and how much can I do? And is that going to progress me in my career? Because then it's conducive. Do you feel what I'm saying? So for me, it's just like, if the side hustle is conducive to that person's future and is conducive to that person's, you know, ability and skill set, all for it, all fantastic. Like, you know, the only value isn't direct wealth. That's not the only value being created in these things. So I just think people have to have a kind of like holistic attitude to it, and yeah, I think that's achievable.
I love that. Gabriel, do you have any final thoughts? Because I'm gonna need to jump in a sec.
Yeah. I really liked how the conversation was kind of like led today. How he's kind of talked about. It began about work, then we weaved it into privilege, and then we finally come to just this whole thing about side hustles, and it was like even Cameron, like what you were saying, like it's actually just kind of I was letting it soak in. Like I've been thinking, oh, I need to treat this as a business, or I need to treat this as a project, but I'm young, fam. Like I had to remind myself every day I'm young, and people aren't. Not only are people not doing the things that I'm doing, but they're not even trying to do it like how I'm doing it. So the things that I'm learning, even if I'm flopping, the lessons in that it's insane, and it's managed to land me big opportunities. Like one, even the grad opportunity that I was talking about. If it wasn't for my side hustle, the way I was able to, the things that I'd learned, the terms that I'd learned, what I was able to talk about, they wouldn't have given me the opportunity, especially being the big firm that like Unilever is. And I feel like it's a plus for me, it's a positive for me. And I guess I hope this conversation actually benefits someone, and like they actually take something away from this. And they don't feel like a complete failure for starting something and then not finishing it, because really and truly, when was the last time we ever finished anything? That wasn't school.
You know what it is as well? Like that's the place where you can test it. You probably can't mess around with your real career and your actual job, your 9 to 5, how you're putting food on the table. Like that's an element of privilege, you know. Like for me to be talking about, you should be focused in your main job and you should be passionate about that, an element of privilege as well, because I've been able to work, which puts myself in a position to actually say and justify that, and my CV doesn't look dead. So, you know, all of these things are factual. And at the end of the day, if you can kind of, I guess the word is compartmentalize your lessons to a degree, so that you are learning in your career, but you're somewhat de-risked. So you're not going into work and doing the mad thing. You're not going into work and saying, yo, man, I want to be in UX now, and switching up. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's all sounding crazy. But actually, you know what? I've done a course on Scrimbar. I've done a course on interaction design or whatever it is. And now I'm able to kind of like turn my hand and do something. And you know what? I've designed a couple logos. If one goes terribly, as long as you're honest, you know, you tell the client like, hey, man, I'm new to this. Sorry that it didn't quite work out. Apologies. Like, you have to charge the guy if you don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. Like, how hard can you lose? And I think like creating those kind of learning moments for oneself and creating safe ways to put yourself out there is really sensible. I always say to people like, yo, like I'm really privileged to have people like David and like older people as friends. And sometimes like if some of the chats and the conversations we're in, man, I throw out some different ideas just into that group. That's not a side hustle, but it's a way that I'm compartmentalizing my learning. You know, putting it out to people who have more experience, and I'm getting feedback on the ideas and the thoughts that I'm putting out. Very similar. Take the side hustle, put out things, test things, learn things, prototype things, figure stuff out. You could learn really quickly. This ain't for me. Well, this is for me. You know, it could be really, really strong.
Yeah, just tying that back before I dip as well. It also made me think about exactly what you were saying, was when I left law as an example. So I left law, I spent, you know, some time consulting for startups, doing, you know, growth consulting, strategy consulting. And I remember a friend of mine, another lawyer, was like, how do you even learn to do all this stuff? Like, weren't we all busy? Weren't we all in the office doing this and that? But that was my side hustle. Like, that's what I was doing, because I had this skill set that I wanted to develop. And so I spent the time outside of work. Again, obviously not to the risk of your mental health or anything like that. But, you know, I spent that time, in addition to what my regular job was, building this skill set. The reason I built that skill set is so I can leverage that skill set to do more of that kind of work that I would like to do. Even if I didn't necessarily want to do it, at least it just adds something to your package, you know? A great analogy of this, I don't know if you guys watch basketball. You see Dame Lillard, how he added that deep three to his package, because he didn't have that before. He was just doing little ISO ball, doing all this, you know, trying to do what Kyrie Irving was doing. He can still do that, but now he can pull up from deep three. Now he has something else in his package that he can fall back on if people are exactly. So I think, I mean, I don't want to make that analogy too crazy, but it's just the fact that, you know, when you add other things to your skill set and what you can do, it creates other avenues of possibility, and now you can be dangerous in a lot of different ways. But yeah, that's all we have time for this week. But Cameron, you're 100% going to come back, because I want to talk about some more aspects of this, but also I want to talk about some other things, like what you're talking about in terms of growth in the Black community in general, but also some offshoots of that. You are a very educated man. You went to
Stubborn.
Oxford University, if I can say. But but then also within institutions, Gabriel, going to Unilever, you've worked within banks, you've worked within other spaces. I've worked within, a big global law firm. And so I'm really interested in talking about how, as people from our community, we navigate these spaces and how we can, whether we should be aiming to go into those spaces, whether we should be aiming to build our own thing, and what does the path actually look like? Because I think the thing is, a lot of us are young, and in many cases, the first generation or the second generation to even have these opportunities. And so a lot of people don't necessarily know what the path is supposed to look like. And typically there's one path that seems like it works for everyone. But then I think there's also now, I hope I become an example of this, of people that can take alternative paths and still become, do relatively okay and prove that it's possible that you don't have to just do things this way. But that's what we're going to talk about next time you're on, Cameron.
Absolutely. Can I do a quick shout out? I know it's cheeky.
Yeah, no.
It's actually the reason I was late as well. Currently there's a natural disaster in St. Vincent, which is the island of my home country, and we're organising supplies and things to go out there. So if people could just kind of like keep aware. There's a couple of different kind of GoFundMes going around, and but yeah, it's quite tricky. Like my whole family's been evacuated in Georgetown, and you've got like 20 people in one house, and you've got all kinds of things, and people struggling for essentials. Water's been damaged, water supplies being cut off, electricity's been damaged in areas. So if anyone can lend a support, a share, a retweet, all of those things help. And obviously like money and goods and non-perishables and those types of things are also very beneficial to the people in the community.
100%, man. We'll put that out, and also if there's any details we can put in the description, then just send that through.
I will do, bro. Appreciate that, David.
No problem at all, man. Thank you guys, everyone, for coming, and we'll see the rest of you next time.
See you guys.